Hey, I'm Steve. This is SB's Auto, and today we're doing something a little different. We're working on a snowblower. Come check it out. So I have this Simplicity snowblower with a 13.5 horse Briggs and Stratton on it. This thing's a great snowblower, but I do have one issue right now. You can see down there, there is no pole to start this. Luckily it does have a electric start, which is how I made it through the year last year. But I did run into times when I ran out of gas in the yard and had to drag this thing back to the garage to get it started. I don't want to do that again, so I'm going to fix it, and I'm going to show you how. So in order to work on the back side of this, I like to put these things up on the front there so that I can access that easily. So I'm just going to pick it up, roll it forward, carefully set it down. That'll give me access to the area I need to work on, and it's nice and stable. So in order to put a new pull cord in this, you've got to access this area here. You can see they pop riveted this. So in order to get this whole housing off, I'm going to have to remove it underneath some of this plastic so that we can get in there. So the first part I'm going to remove is this plastic panel here and here. Okay, pop that off. Now, there are normally two retainers here. However, they broke off on mine. Choke button, or the choke, seems to hold it in place fine, so I'm not too worried about it. Roll that out of the side. You can see the choke extension here. And then I'm going to get, I believe these are 10 millimeter, and remove that cover plate there. I'm going to slide this screen off of the carburetor. Careful not to lose those spacers. And this housing is actually underneath this carburetor, so I'm going to take the carburetor off. And to do that, it has some studs on there. This is a 5/32 6-point will fit these. Before I get that all the way off of there, I want to grab some pliers, pull that fuel line off. Make sure your fuel is off. I burned mine out of the carburetor last fall. And there's also the primer hose. Now I can take this carburetor off all right. So I loosen both of those studs. Now with my fingers I can take the rest of it off. So there's a throttle linkage and a spring that you need to remove as well. Pull this fuel line out of the way. See it down here. So on this model, it's just a little clip, pops away. You can see that, pops away like that. Take your spring, just be careful not to fling it off somewhere. Carefully loosen it, pull that clip away, and you can just pull the linkage straight out. Remove your carburetor. Now I have access to this area. I'm going to go onto the other side and pull off a couple more panels so that we can unbolt this thing and get to that pull cord. So if you look on this side, still some things in the way of that shroud. I'm going to pull this off. I'm also going to pull the cover for the starter, and then there's one more item after that. So these are 8mm, or it looks like they have a Torx, but I have an 8mm here, so that's what I'm going to use. And as far as your gas shutoff, you don't really need to worry about that, but you need to pull this little plastic piece off of the throttle there and remove the rest of the. And you got to kind of work it over this throttle. There we go. Now that's out of the way. Okay, we also need to remove this little cover off the starter. That's a 7mm set up there. And we'll set that aside and out of the way. Alright, there's one more thing that's going to give you a problem for us. That's this linkage for the speed of the snowblower. I'm just going to get it out of the way so that when we loosen this, we can pull this out through the back here and not have this rod in our way. So this is a 7/16 on top, and then a 1/2 inch on the bottom. Careful not to lose that lock washer. Just set those two aside, and then this we can lift up out of the way. Okay, so now we are free to access this area. There are 3 bolts holding this on. One here, one kind of down here behind that, and then one on the other side. Can you see it? Right down there. So I'm going to loosen those 3 and then we'll pull this off. Okay, so these are 10mm. Like I said, there's 3 of them. Maybe a little tricky to reach, but a little patience and you'll get there. Alright, and then the last one here. Alright, now we should be able to get this out. Lift it up straight. Rotate it a little bit, comes right out. This is where this pull engages. And we're going to go over to the bench and see if we can put a new rope in this. Okay, so we're over at the bench. Turn this guy over. Look inside. This is what our pull cord attaches to. There's a spring in here. I'm going to show you how to do this. Alright, so this is an 8mm. I'm going to go ahead and remove this retaining bolt. So as this spins, these come out, catch that part on the flywheel, and turns the motor for you. What we need to do though is get in here and put a new cord. So I'm going to lift this up. Be careful, there is a spring underneath here. And that's what gives it the recoil to pull it back. Okay, so I got a piece of rope here from my local small engine repair place. And if this is sitting in the housing, you notice that the cord goes in this direction and then it will wind this way. I'm going to go ahead and feed this in here a little bit, tie a knot in it. Alright, so that's going to sit like that, and then we're going to wind this rope up. If you turn this over, these can come off. They are greased so that they move easily. Just make sure if you drop them, you clean them off before you put them back in. Alright, so if you can see in here, there's a little catch. And that's what this portion here is supposed to catch onto. So feed your rope through. You're going to need to keep some tension on that. Otherwise it'll fall off of this pulley and then you'll have to start over. So this is the tricky part. I don't know if you can see in there. That little clip is going to go down and into that retainer underneath this. I'll pull it back out. See, right here. You got to catch that with that clip so that that spring will keep tension on this and recoil it. I use a little pick to get that in there. So we're going to go ahead and do that. So push that over a little bit, and as you can see it catches and we have recoil. So before that pops back off, take your little retainer here and tighten that back down. So now that I got the cord back in, pretty easy. It's just reverse of how we took it out. So this back one here, there is a ground that's underneath that back bolt. Just make sure that goes back into place. Otherwise you're going to have some electrical issues. Alright, then we'll put the carburetor back on. Make sure your gasket's still in the right place, or replace it if it's in bad condition. Slide it down carefully. Carefully reattach the spring and the linkage. Then I'm going to snug these back down. And the screen. Spacers. Don't forget your fuel line. And you've got to put this bottom cover on first before you put the top piece back on. Also a good idea to plug your primer hose back on. There's a little tab here, and there's a slot on the front of this that needs to fit into. It'll help you get this lined up. And then the key. Alright, so there's some rope hanging out here. I do have the handle. Managed to keep that when it broke. But there is a lot of extra rope on this. If you pull this out, that's not way further than I'm going to ever pull it. So what I do, I like to let this recoil a bit. And it's going to get to a point where it doesn't want to pull anymore. I'm going to pull it out just a little bit past that point. And I'm going to cut it, feed it through here, knot it. That way it'll pull the handle in all the way. So I'm going to go about 4 inches past. Tie a knot in this. So that's going to have a good recoil. Hold my handle up out of the way. So I'm happy with that. I'm going to cut this off here. And I'm going to take a lighter to that, melt that nylon so it doesn't fray out. And there we have it. Alright, thanks for watching another episode of SB's Auto. Hopefully this helps some of you out. As always, like and subscribe, and stay tuned for more videos.